So the next speaker is Avery Faigenbaum. He's been a friend of mine for over 23 years. Know Avery from the East Coast. The funny thing about Avery is he's awesome speaker. He's great. He's dynamic. If you guys read about Brian Mann, he texted or tweeted at Brett and was like, "Hey, good luck following Avery." So he's great, and it's cool that I can call him a friend. So Avery Faigenbaum.
Cheers, thanks. You're the best. 15 minutes. I'll take 15. Good morning, everyone. It's certainly nice to be here. This is my third time back at KU. The first time I spoke here, Andrea gave me 1 hour, which is a nice chunk of time. And my second time here, Andrea gave me 50 minutes. And today she's given me 40 minutes. And a few moments ago, she said, Avery, don't cram your 60-minute talk into 40 minutes. I know you're from Jersey and you grew up in Boston, but good luck with that, Coach. So here we go. So I'm talking about youth resistance training today, and this is the kind of work I do. And today, in the next few moments, I have some good news for you. I have some bad news for you. And I have some really ugly news for you, but let's start with this. So here's our plan. You know, I like to be a little organized today, and it helps me follow my thoughts. I'm going to start off with some ugly news today about the myths of youth resistance training, and hopefully provide some science behind what we should really be doing with boys and girls. And then I have some really bad news for you, and we're going to talk about what I call this strength deficit. I know many of you in this room work with college athletes, elite athletes, and pro athletes, but I'm going to let you know in my world there's a strength deficit. And what you find yourself you're due as a high school coach or college coach is simply returning that loss of muscle potential that never should have been lost in the first place. And I'm going to leave you with some good news because nothing beats resistance training. And I have one more point, because as I looked at the lineup for today, sometimes I ask myself, you know, why am I invited to this conference? And I look at some of you. Some of you are top-level coaches, you're elite-level coaches, but I'm not. I just got to tell you one thing on my bio is that, you know, that's me back in 1990 when I started working with kids, and I focused on the importance of resistance training. And as you'll see now, I bring kids to the lab, and we look at the cardiometabolic cost of resistance training. I want you to know I'm a pediatric exercise scientist. I'm a college professor and a researcher, and I work with kids in the afternoon in my after-school programs. I want you to know I do not work with college athletes. I do not work with pro athletes. I do not work with elite athletes. I don't work with Olympic athletes. I only work with children. That's the work I do, okay? But you should be real interested in the work I do, because if I screw up, you will have to undo all those problems. And if I do a really good job, I will present to Coach Hootie, an 18-year-old athlete. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. But let's start off with the myths that won't quit. You've all heard this, that strength training is ineffective for puberty, that a certain amount of testosterone is needed. Ladies, what do you think of that one? Of course, boys and girls can get stronger. There are neuromuscular adaptations. Next, it's false. It's unsafe for children. That's false. Rollerblading can be unsafe. Skiing can be unsafe. Soccer can be unsafe. What does the data say? The data says this type of training can in fact be safe, but instruction and a sensible progression are key. Limited health benefits, that's false. We're not just talking about performance today, we're also talking about an increase in bone mineral density, an increase in skeletal muscle function that reduces a child's risk of developing diabetes. And we've all heard this one, that strength training can damage the growth plates. I mean, how many people have heard this? That strength training is going to stunt the growth of children or damage their growth plates. This is what I was dealing with back in 1990 from different medical organizations who said children shouldn't strength train. And this is bad news for guys like you and me. This is really bad news, because now we're trying to convince others that this is the kind of exercise children should do. You know, don't be scared. Don't be scared of weightlifting. Don't be scared of power cleans. Don't be scared of squats. Don't be scared of this stuff. That little fella's scared. Don't be scared of this kind of training. Okay? You know, you read the papers and what do you see? You know? What kind of activities can children do? Children shouldn't do strength training. Everything else is okay. Everything else is okay, but don't do strength training. This is what you see. And did you see this in the New York Times last Sunday? I'm not talking 1990. I'm talking last Sunday, the New York Times. Real nice article on powerlifting for kids under the guidance of qualified instructors and qualified coaches. The New York Times writing about this stuff, okay? But of course, be careful, because it's going to damage the growth centers. It's still out there. It's still out there. And guys like me, and perhaps you, have to educate the public and coaches and teachers and trainers. My friend Andy Fry's in the audience. I told him I was going to talk about this study. Look at the date in the bottom right-hand corner, 1993. And one of his favorite studies that he did, looking at the bone mineral density of elite junior weightlifters. You know, weightlifting makes bone strong. Powerlifting makes bone strong. Resistance training makes bone strong. We've known this for 25 years. This is what the science says. My colleagues and I have reviewed the literature, and I want you to know that a growth plate fracture has never been reported in the literature that provided guidance and instruction. Never. This type of injury hasn't happened. It just hasn't happened, but the myths still persist. So what I find myself doing now is educating parents and coaches and teachers and trainers about these myths that still linger. And then we wait until high school, or then we wait until college, until we start loading up these athletes. That's not what we should be doing. I know many of you in this room are high school coaches. Here's a survey we did not too long ago. You know, we developed a questionnaire for some PE teachers and coaches and some PE students. And many of you in this room took NSCA or ACSM certifications. I want you to know that this was freshman level easy. This was freshman level muscle structure and function. Can kids resistance train? What are the health benefits of resistance training? What's a reasonable combination for program design? This was nowhere near the CSCS exam or the CPT exam. And what was the pass rate? It was pathetic. And these aren't moms and dads. These are our coaches, and these are our future PE teachers. See, these are some of the challenge. Indeed, this is ugly news. If you come visit me at the College of New Jersey, you'll see this on my office wall, one of my favorite paintings by Peter Bruegger the Elder. Take a close look. What do you see in that painting? What do you see? Take a close look. You see 200 children moving. What about this one? Sort of a fireman's carry with a lateral hop. What about this one? Some nice core training, moving their arms back and forth. Or what about this one? Leapfrog. So if I call it leapfrog, it's safe. If I call it a double leg plyometric hop, it's dangerous. It's bizarre. Everything you see here is resistance training. Take a close look. Everything you see here is teaching the body how to move. Jump, hop, skip, lunge, push, pull. Everything you see here from 1560. And my favorite was in this one right here. In 1560, they did not have balloons or medicine balls. She is blowing up a pig's bladder. In 1560, they used pig's bladders. But everything you see here, I will argue that if you came to visit me in New Jersey and came to one of our after-school programs, you will see this, and I'm really not exaggerating that much. You will see this. This is what we're trying to do. But it's ugly out there because the myths still persist. So how much physical activity do children need? Let's get back to basics. The World Health Organization says kids need at least 60 minutes a day. 60 minutes a day is where we're at. But then the question, when somebody stands in front of you and puts this up on a slide, you must ask 60 minutes of what? You have to ask that question because this is why it's getting so ugly. Well, let's start our walking programs for kids. Go outside and play. You should be more active. It's just not working. And if I was to ask you, how active were you when you were 8 years or 9 years or 10 years old? You walked to school, you played outside for 2 to 3 hours, you had phys ed every day, and maybe you played a sport. Think about it. You probably did 2 to 3 hours per day, right? Exactly. And we're not even getting close to, this is accumulating 60 minutes. This isn't 60 consecutive minutes. So let's take a quick look. How active are kids? How many kids around the world are accumulating 60 minutes? So if a country is accumulating 60 minutes, you put little accelerometers on kids, you monitor thousands of kids in a given country, and if most of the kids in a given country accumulate 60 minutes, you get an A. That's the way it works. So the bar's set at 60 minutes. I think it's a really low bar. No country got an A. Slovenia got an A. New Zealand got a B, but probably for different reasons. Because in Slovenia, physical education is valued. In New Zealand, they have a strong sport culture. Some countries got a C. United States, D-. It's pathetic. When this came out, I said to the researchers, give us an F. Give us the F. Only 20% of American boys and girls accumulate 60 minutes a day. I want to ask, I know many of you are college students as we're heading to final exams. Are you a college student? Who's a college student? Some of you guys, you're a college student? You have exams coming up next week? Okay. What's your favorite class?
Probably exercise
Exercise science, all right. So if you got a 20% on the final, what grade should you get? F, thank you, exactly. Not a D minus, right? You're not gonna go to the professor and say, oh, I got 20% right, give me an F, give me a D minus. It looks better than an F. No, you would go to the professor because you're a smart guy. You say, give me the F, right? And next semester I'll retake the class and I'll do better, right? Exactly. I say, give me, so, but we gave ourselves a D minus. It's like we're sort of passing. No, you're not passing. An F, it should be an F. But you know, some countries, I love this, Belgium gave themselves an F plus. Can you imagine this? These are like the smartest statisticians and epidemiologists in a given country, and you know, and the folks in Belgium were looking at the data a couple years ago, and they said, can you imagine? They're looking at their data, and they said, oh no, what the Americans get, D minus. Oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We can't give ourselves an F, but only 10% of the kids are active in Belgium. What are we going to do? Someone said F plus. Someone said F plus, and they actually gave themselves an F plus, but some countries gave themselves an F. So here's where we're at right now. Here's where we're at right now. It's pathetic, and researchers use the word pandemic. Pandemic means it's worldwide. So we're really not doing a good job. All right, check out these data on the 20-meter shuttle run. All of you in this room have done the 20-meter shuttle run, the beep test. And I like these sample sizes of 1.1 million children. I like that sample size. You know, at the College of New Jersey, if I get 40 kids enrolled in my after-school research programs, I'm like having a party, right? 1.1 million. So how are we doing? So this test is done all over the world. Well, some kids in Tanzania and Iceland are doing pretty good. In Mexico and Peru, and it's interesting as you look at trends in obesity, they follow this. Because in Mexico and Peru, they have a big obesity problem, worse than us. In Europe, some countries in Europe, so where's America? Where are the American kids doing? Where are the American kids? 47th out of 50. D minus. D minus. Look at this. We have to ask ourselves, and we have to tell ourselves that what we're doing right now isn't working. And it's hard for us. We are failing miserably at keeping the next generation of children healthy, fit, and strong. It's not a D minus, it's not a C plus, it's not an F plus, it's an F. So whatever we're doing right now isn't working. Let's admit that. Whatever we're doing right now, the system is broken. It's simply not working. I actually coined this term with a colleague of mine called exercise deficit disorder. Some of you may like it, some of you don't. I think it's actually a disorder. If children don't accumulate 60 minutes of exercise or activity per day, I think it's a disorder on par with obesity, on par with hypertension, on par with dyslipidemia. We need to treat it with the same energy and vigor. I know some of you in this room are healthcare providers. But if I was 8 years old and walked into your office with a cigarette in my hand and said, hey, doc, how you doing? I'm here for my checkup. How would you react? You know, many of you in this room are parents. So what if your little 10-year-old daughter walks home from school and you say, how you doing? And your daughter said, hey, I just started smoking. It's really cool. Like, how would you react? You know? Or what if you had a child who was overweight? Or what if you had a child who was hypertensive? We'd react a certain way. But how come when our children are inactive, we don't react that way? But maybe there's not a diagnosis. I think it should be a diagnosis. I think it should be exercise deficit disorder. And it's nice to see on Time magazine, this term is sort of entering the literature, not the scientific literature, or not just the scientific literature, but we see this in Time magazine where so many children have exercise deficit disorder. And is this the solution? So we're going to have these kids come to our after-school programs? Come on, Johnny. Thanks for coming to my after-school program. I'm Coach Faigenbaum. We're going to do don't stop, Johnny. We're going to do 60 minutes today. Don't stop. 59 more minutes. There you go. Good. Okay. So then I'm going to go to Starbucks, get a coffee. I'll be right back. You guys see this? I tell you what, if this is what your program looks like, Coach, it's an absolute cop-out. And if I was a superintendent in the school district, I would fire you. And I'd replace you with a paraprofessional for $10 an hour. This isn't what we should be doing. You know, what happened to active play? There's a lot I like about this. There's a lot I like about this. Not just the skill building activities, but the hanging upside down, training the vestibular system in the inner ear. How many kids these days can't turn their head and run this way when they're playing a game of tag and they fall? You know? And you know, I really like this, and you guys remember this one? You guys remember this? You put your little sister or brother on this. Come on, Johnny. This is going to be a whole lot of fun for you. Just, I know you were trying back then. Your goal was to enhance the vestibular system in their inner ear. I know that was what you were thinking when you were 8, right? But this was really good for us. This was really, really good for us. We didn't know it back then, but we were training our underlying neuromuscular system and the vestibular system in our inner ear, so when we went on to play sport in a game of tag, okay, we didn't fall and we could move with energy and vigor. And I love these big sliding boards. You guys remember these? Boy, were they fast. I remember going down one, it must have been 10 feet in the air, like you were going really fast. But that was really good for us, okay? And I love these swings. And what did you guys do when you were on the swings? Of course you jumped off. Of course you did. I mean, I had so many tears in my jeans. My mom just stopped buying me jeans. I had patches just everywhere, just full of patches. And we were okay. We were okay. One could argue we were preparing ourselves for sport. You know, and now, hang on, where am I going here? So now our playgrounds look like this. So this is the new playground in my neighborhood. This is true. New playground in my neighborhood. The problem is this stuff gets too easy. I see 5- and 6-year-olds use this, and after about an hour, they figure it out. It's not fun anymore. 85% of American kids live within walking distance of a playground, but why aren't they used? Maybe it's just too easy. Maybe it's just not fun. I watch the kids, and after about 1 hour, they figure it out. It's too easy. And what's the difference between this and this? Think about it. What's the difference? You know? Look, that's supposed to prepare our kids for sport, and this is going to help our grandparents get up and down stairs. What's the difference? There's really not much difference at all. We're taking out the fun, we're taking out the challenge, okay? And then there's this. I borrowed this from a friend of mine in Canada. I was at a conference once, and he was there. If we build it, will they come? I said, man, if this is what your playgrounds look like in Canada, man, you guys got some problems up there, man. You know, there's something very, very wrong with this sliding board in Canada. You know what I mean? You know, one of my mentors in the field is Dr. Tom Rowland, a pediatric cardiologist who back in the 90s when I was working on my dissertation, he sort of introduced me to the science of exercise science for children. He introduced me, he said there really is a science. He told me that children are not miniature adults, and children are less mature than adults, and children are active for different reasons and in different ways than adults. And, you know, back in the 1990s, he highlighted the fact that he said we have this period of adolescence is a risk factor. And he was right back in the 90s, that we were doing okay during the primary school years, but then adolescence became a risk factor. But now the new data says something different. The new data says we have that decline about age 7. Now, if you leave my presentation with anything today, okay, I want you to remember this, that the decline in physical activity begins at age 6 or 7, not high school. With all due respect to the high school coaches in this audience, if we wait until high school for our interventions, we are 10 years too late. If we wait until high school for our interventions, we are 10 years too late. Do I support high school interventions? Of course. I think Coach Nick and others will be talking about high school interventions. But we're 10 years too late. If the decline starts early, why are we waiting until age 15, 16, or 17? So kids are doing okay until they enter first grade, and then what we do as educators, we take the physical activity right out of their life. In Trenton, New Jersey, kids have physical education once every 6 days. Recess is considered optional. And some of the parks and playgrounds in my community are simply too unsafe. I said this to a colleague of mine who's a professor of early childhood education. She goes, what do you want everyone in Kansas to remember? I said, I want them to remember that the decline in physical activity starts early in life, about age 6 or 7. She says, isn't that interesting? She shared this study with me. This was a longitudinal study of 4,000 children, studied longitudinally, and here's what she found, okay? She said, reading proficiency in 3rd grade predicts whether you're gonna drop out of high school 10 years later. Reading proficiency, not mastery, reading proficiency in 3rd grade, okay, you could call it reading literacy in 3rd grade, influences where they're going to drop out of high school. In fact, kids who are not proficient readers at 3rd grade around age 8 are 4 times as likely to drop out of high school. And I said to her, well, if you're more likely to drop out of high school, you're more likely to commit a crime. She said, you're right. And I said, if you're more likely to commit a crime, you're more likely to end up in jail. She said, you're right. I said, well, then I can look at 3rd grade reading levels throughout the country and predict how many jails we need in different cities. She said, you're going too far. I said, but am I? Am I really going too far? Because in my world of pediatric exercise science, I can take a look at the movement skills of 6 to 10-year-olds. I can look at the movement skills of 6-year-olds, as you see here. And in 1st grade, if you're a good mover, not how much do you squat, not how much do you clean, but if you're a good mover, jump, hop, skip, push, in 3rd and 4th grade, you're still a good mover. Some refer to this as physical literacy, your ability to move with style, grace, and confidence and competence in a variety of settings, in different environments, on the sports field, on the playground. But at the age of 6 or 7, if you're not a good mover, by the time you hit 3rd and 4th grade, it sticks. An important message is children do not outgrow automatically these neuromuscular deficiencies. It's very naive for us to believe that if a 7-year-old is inactive, unfit, and weak and a bad mover, when they go to high school, magically, they will become a good mover. It just doesn't happen. These are developmental trajectories which continue in this path unless we intervene. If you want to wait till high school, that's fine, but I think we're 10 years too late. If you want to wait until high school to teach illiterate teenagers how to read, my response is good luck. And I hope you have a PhD in English literature and early childhood education, because you need to be a master educator to teach 16 and 17-year-olds who are illiterate how to read at the 3rd grade level. In the same vein, you need to be a master teacher and coach to motivate and educate and inspire the 15 and 16-year-olds who are really bad movers, who don't like PE, who don't sign up for our sports programs. It's really hard. So what happened? 1966. 1966. When did we stop teaching movement schools in PE? Like, what happened? What happened? PE used to be characterized by strength and skill building activities using our own body weight. But what happened? You know, some of you, will remember this. Some of you will remember this, Some of you remember some of these, let's see if I get this going here. Does this look like PE to some of you? Some of you remember this. This is a PE class years ago. Can you imagine, compare this to what you see today? Can you imagine, this isn't military boot camp. This isn't a sports conditioning camp. This is what PE used to be. Some of you who are a bit younger are looking at this thinking, what is that? No, this is what PE used to be, and some of you in this room know exactly. If I did that to children in class today, I would be arrested. They'd take me to the Trenton State Prison. Okay? I couldn't do that, and the teachers in class know this. I can't do that to children in my class. But that's what PE used to be. And then I walk to the schools and I see this, do not use. Do not use, we're getting rid of that stuff. One of the classic books on this, it's so important to me, I have 2 copies of it, one at home, one in my office, Growth, Maturation, and Physical Activity by the legends of pediatrics and pediatric exercise science, Rob Moline and Claude Bouchard and the late Oded Bar-Or. And for those of you interested in growth and development and maturation, this book is just a needed resource. But I'll turn to page 216 on this book, because this influences my work, that strength is an essential component of motor performance, and a certain level of strength is necessary to carry out a task. And if you don't believe me, I want you to go to a beginner's gymnastics class with boys and girls age 6, 7, and 8. I want you to go to a beginner's martial arts class for boys and girls age 6, 7, 8. And immediately, you will see the boys and girls who can't even stand. You will see immediately the boys and girls who can't even tumble. They don't have the prerequisite levels of muscle strength. Not to do a high kick or not to do a vault, just to do the fundamental skills. It's easy. So if you don't believe the science, I want you to go to a beginner's gymnastics class or martial arts class. And I am the biggest fan of gymnastics and martial arts because they teach children to move their bodies with poise and energy and grace. But you will see it if you don't believe me. Strength seems to be a prerequisite. What happens if you don't have an adequate level of strength? You get this. Come on, Johnny, kick the ball. Come on, kick the ball. I mean, is this the next generation of boys and girls? There we go. Come on. Whoops. So is that the generation of what we're training right now? I sort of look at this as a pathological vortex of inactivity that begins with this. It begins with this. We can trace this back to a lack of muscle strength. And some of you here who work with high-level college athletes know exactly what I'm talking about. You can trace back their deficiencies to a lack of muscle strength. And then we have a lack of movement skills. So here's a 10-year-old in one of our after-school programs, and I don't think you need a PhD in biomechanics to see there's something wrong with that squat. She's not ready to move. She's not ready for sport. It's troubling. And by the way, notice how I'm not showing you overweight children today. Notice how I'm not showing you obese children today. We have this perception in our society that as long as that child is skinny, they're okay. That's wrong. You can be a skinny child and you can have prediabetes and you can have hypertension and you can be what some call, I don't like the word fat, some call them skinny fat children. That's not my word, I don't like it, but I've seen it in the literature. You can be a skinny child but a weak child, and you can be a skinny child with high levels of fasting glucose. You can be a skinny child unable to move. So simply because a child is skinny does not mean they're so-called healthy. These children I'm showing you today are skinny, okay? And then here's another, he wants to play lacrosse. He can't stand on one leg. His glutes are narcoleptic. And what happens? This happens about age 10. Think back to when you were 10. When 6-year-olds play soccer, they just chase the soccer ball. You guys know that. Chase beehive soccer. But at age 10, life changes. At age 10, you start looking around that soccer field. Oh man, he's really good. And she's really good. And I'm not going to embarrass myself in front of my family and friends. That's when it happens. And I'm just going to, Mom, I'm bored. I don't want to go. My tummy hurts. You know it. I see it every day. About age 10. It happens. And then what happens? Eat more. Eat more. Replace activity time with eating time. What happens next? We start to see, an increase in risk factors. So now we have that child who's a little overweight, and these are the real hard children to work with. And I have a child in my program right now, 10 years old, 272. 10 years old, 272 pounds in Trenton, New Jersey. Okay, that little fella has 50 pounds on me, and he's 10. He's 10. We'll talk about that another day. And then if you look at what happens then, I guess, when you're 50 or 60 years old, you have your MI or a heart attack. Okay, did you see? Oh, I'm sorry, the clicker is very sensitive. Or what about this? There's a 3-year-old in Texas just diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and she weighed 80 pounds at age 3. Age 3. Or do you hear about this, that 18-year-old, super sensitive, that 18-year-old in England who died due to an MI, due to his obesity? I mean, these are some serious issues here. I know we're supposed to talk about performance, but these are huge global issues that have huge public health concerns to all of us. I know we're talking about sets and reps and performance, but these are huge issues that affect all of us. So maybe we need to start thinking about this stuff. But here's the bad news now. That was the ugly news. Now, here's some bad news. The bad news is we have this strength deficit. Other researchers looked at trends in overall physical activity. I'm particularly interested in strength. And if you look around the world, okay, in terms of the strength deficit, what the researchers have done around the world, and they don't measure strength from an epidemiological point of view with a power clean or a back squat. They tend to use measures such as the hand grip and long jump, good surrogate measures of strength when you're testing 10,000 children. And over the past 10 or 20 years in Spain, we see a decrease in strength and power in kids. Over the past 10 years in England, we see a decrease in strength. So you're seeing a trend here. Over the past 10 or 20 years in Wales, a decrease in strength. Over the past this was actually 26 years in the Netherlands, a decrease in upper body strength and lower body strength. Over the past 10 years or 13 years in Australia, we see a decrease in movement skills. Over the past 10, 20 years in Czechoslovakia, we see a decrease in strength. In Lithuania, a decrease in strength. This isn't an American problem, this is a global problem. Children today are weaker than previous generations. Some countries, I alluded to earlier, New Zealand, are doing okay. There's some hope in New Zealand, okay? And some countries, and it's nice to talk about a little bit of positive news, in Finland. In Finland, they're doing okay. I've been to Finland several times, and Finland's interesting. You know that in primary school in Finland, every 45 to 60 minutes, the kids get an activity break? Do you know in Finland, they have physical education every day? And if it's snowing outside, you still play outside in Finland? It's a different culture. It's a different culture. One more point on Finland. If you look around the world at academic performance, who ranks the highest in reading and math and science? The Finns. The Finns, not the Americans. The Finns. Something for us to think about. What about the USA? Some of you got to remember this. We don't really have good longitudinal data on measures of muscular strength on kids in America. We used to do this. That got too hard. And then we did the flexed arm hang. That got too hard. Then we did this. That got too hard. Then we did this. That's getting hard. So then we started doing this. Oh, boy. Are you ready? So the question I have for you is, what's next? How many of you did the pull-up when you were in phys ed? The pull-up. Some of you did. Yeah, some of you. For the most part, the pull-up has been eliminated. I spent a lot of time as a researcher in public schools, and I supervise a lot of my students. And the other day, I was in Trenton, New Jersey at a primary school. I wasn't the teacher, and I saw this. I said to the teacher, "What are you doing?" He says, "We're doing the wall push-up." I said, "Wait, that's not part of the fitness gram test battery." He says, "The kids can't get push-ups." I said, "Are you serious?" He said, "Yes." The wall push-up. the wall push-up. And these kids aren't overweight. He says they can't get push-ups. And it got me thinking, what are they going to do next year? The air push-up. Ooh, come on. So what's next year? So why can't we have PE every day, look at our deficiencies, and design programs that enhance strength and power? That's just a thought. That's just a thought, okay? So we've gone from the pull-up, which half of you in this room have done, to the push-up, which everyone in this room has done, to now, and I'm not saying this is a global trend, this is in my neck of the woods, but this is what I'm seeing. The wall push-up. Muscular strength is optional. We'll worry about that later, is what I hear. Just timing your target heart rate zone. We're going to worry about that later. We'll let Coach Hootie fix that. We'll let Coach Hootie, because I'm going to get the heart rates above 150, and I'm going to be Teacher of the Year. And we'll worry about those strength deficits later, you know, lack of outdoor play, limited phys ed. You know, I know we have a lot of teachers in the audience, okay? We can talk about that later, okay? I'm down to once every 6 days in Trenton, okay? I'm trying to find a school that has PE twice per week in New Jersey so I can continue my research, because I need 2 days per week, and it's hard. I haven't found one yet. That's a public school. Private, yes, but not public, and I like working in some public schools, okay? Sports practice is falling short of expectations. You see how active kids are in sports practice, and I know many of you in this room are awesome coaches, but others are not. Too much time standing in line, too much time sitting down. Kids are not as active as they should be, okay? Early sports specialization, sort of a hot topic right now. So kids are focusing on their sports-specific skills, but not what I call general conditioning. General conditioning. So you're focusing on your tennis or your baseball or your basketball or your cross country, but you're not developing general fitness. And by the way, you're 8. If you had an 8-year-old daughter who is really good in math, how many of you would go to the principal and say, my daughter's really good at math, she's going to get a scholarship to KU, I don't want her taking the silly stuff in reading and writing and art and phys ed, only math. No one in this room would say that. But why do we think like that when it comes to sport? It's bizarre. And new data says this kind of stuff tracks. So the point one was that physical activity in children begins to decline at age 6 and 7. Children are actually weaker than previous generations. And here's the third point I wanted to take home. It sticks. It sticks. So when you look at 20-year data that follows children from 1985 to 20 years later, here's the take-home point, is that level of muscular fitness track. And what that means is that children who are weak in primary school are going to be weak in high school unless we intervene. And children who are stronger in primary school will likely be stronger in high school. It tends to track, just like measures of aerobic fitness. So are these kids ready to play? Okay, again, I'm not showing you overweight kids today. I'll come back another day and you'll meet some fellows who are over 200 pounds. Today I'm talking about normal weight children. Are these children ready to play? Not play sport. I'm talking play. Childlike play. They can barely move. You look at that child on the right. That's a squat? Maybe we need to work on that. You've never seen this before. This is a 7-inch vertical jump. Watch. One of the girls in our after-school program. I know here at KU you used the 30-inch vertical jumps or 40-inch vertical jumps. You've never seen a 7-inch vertical jump on a skinny 14-year-old girl. That's a 7-inch vertical jump, guys. 7-inch, that means she can barely jump on a shoebox. She can barely jump on a shoebox, and she wants to play sport. These are the boys and girls coming to our programs. She's a good kid, good friends, does well academically. A 7-inch vertical jump? So what should we do for that? Hey, I got an idea. How about if we do engage her in a few laps around the track, okay? If you show me a girl with a 7-inch vertical jump, I'll show you a girl who's going to come in last place in that 1-mile run. I guarantee it. Show me a girl with a 7-inch vertical, I'll show you a girl who comes in last place in a 1-mile run. This hurts. This hurts when I see this. This hurts when I see this. This hurts my heart because I'm a pediatric exercise scientist, okay? This hurts. I wish I had a story for you about her because we enrolled her in our program and she dropped out. She dropped out. We missed this one. We missed her. We should have got her earlier, but she didn't come into our program until age 14. See, I look at this framework between strength and skills. The relationship between strength and skills is synergistic. And in my programs, I focus a little more on strength, okay, because my kids are a little weaker. You might work with children who are a little stronger, so you might have a little more skill building activities or plyometrics. It's okay. I'm not here to sell you any kind of program. So really, if we're trying to prepare kids for sport, it's really that foundation in strength and skills that work. It's that foundation of strength and skills. And I'm sure if I looked at the strength and conditioning program here, as phenomenal as it is, you're going to find yourself restoring that loss of muscle strength that somewhere along the way, for as elite as these athletes are, was lost. And then we're going to enhance athleticism, which is your ability to move with style and grace. We can decrease the risk of injury, and we're going to increase participation. Some refer to this concept as increasing confidence and competence, and some refer to this as physical literacy. The concept of physical literacy. So what are we trying to do? Some people will say physical literacy has become this academic term that people like. Your ability to move with style and grace, your ability to move with confidence and competence in a variety of settings, not just the sports field, but the playground and basketball court. So if this is sort of the solution, maybe we need to start focusing more on strength and skill. You know, and the data's there. What about if kids grow up in an environment where they are exposed to this? You saw a 7-inch vertical. That's a 7-foot high jump. All right? Not bad. Not bad at all. Compare 7 inches to 7 feet. Huh. You know, this is my neighbor. He's 88 years old and had trouble walking up and down stairs. So he starts working with a personal fitness trainer. He started working with a personal fitness trainer. There are thousands of studies that have looked at seniors. The term sarcopenia is not synonymous with dynapenia. Sarcopenia means that loss of muscle flesh, but dynapenia is a newer term, which is that loss of muscle strength and power. And the term dynapenia has been used now with older populations. Like this fella here, one could say, is he has trouble walking up and down a flight of stairs. He has dynapenia. And thousands of studies have shown that if we put him on a training program, he can get stronger. Skeletal muscle that's 88 years old or 98 years old or 100 years old is capable of getting stronger. Here's the good news. In 12 weeks, working with a personal fitness trainer, he got stronger. And his wife says to me, I want to have a little party. He's moving pretty good. I said, all right, let's set up the backyard and we'll have a little party, all right? So that's him right there, all right? So this is after 12 weeks of strength training. Watch, 12 weeks of strength training. There it is. Fantastic, man. I mean, resistance training really, oh, he's good. Watch, look at this. And resistance training really is medicine. But why should that term dynapenia be reserved for seniors? Last year, my colleague Jim McDonald, a pediatric sports medicine doc, and I, we sort of introduced this term into the literature. We call it pediatric dynapenia. See, I'm thinking reaching the point now that we have to start to introduce these terms into the medical literature because people aren't listening to you and me. We got a D-, that should have been enough. People aren't listening to you and me. We have to start introducing these terms into the medical literature. This fella here who cannot do a wall push-up is pediatric dynapenia. This fella here with a 7-inch vertical jump has pediatric dynapenia, right? What's the difference between him and my 88-year-old neighbor? What's the difference? What's the difference? But we view this as an acquired condition. Pediatric dynapenia is not what we'll see in a child, let's say, with a chronic medical condition. No, we're talking about children who are so-called normal, who grow up in an environment with limited opportunities to play, jump, hop, skip, and move. And that results in functional limitations, and then that decreases play and increases risk of injury. So the root cause of all of this is a condition that we see in seniors. Now, some of you in this room might be PTs or OTs or physicians, and you work with seniors. And what you are doing is simply the same as what I'm doing. You're making that 88-year-old stronger so they can function. I'm making children stronger so they can function and are less prone to injury. I'm not saying we will eliminate injury. I'm not saying all children in our programs will get a scholarship. But the data sort of supports this. Here's new data looking at weaker lower extremity strength predicts knee injuries in young females. Young females. It didn't work in males. Maybe the males were stronger. But in this study in young females, I mean, look at the data. That's the pink bar on your left. The weak athletes, the weak high school athletes, over their high school years, suffered more injuries than the stronger high school athletes. So maybe our athletes, particularly our young female athletes, need to get stronger. Our challenge, if I was to be very frank with you, is wait until high school to get those female athletes in. If our young female athletes, or I shouldn't even use that word athlete, because you think of yourself a competitive athlete, but I call all our youngsters athletes. If I look at our youngsters, if I get our youngsters started in middle school, in primary school, and then at high school, they have this foundation of 5 or more years of training experience with us, using their body or moderate loads, then the females stick with us. But the challenge for us right now at the high school level is dispelling those myths associated with resistance training, which include, and every high school coach knows this, my muscles are going to get big and bulky. Oh my gosh, how many times have I heard that from a teenage female athlete? My muscles are going to get big and bulky. You know, we train our young female athletes, okay, and the ones that have been with us for a long time, you know, these athletes can get stronger. People often ask me, how strong can they get? So here's a 16-year-old female athlete, okay, you know, we can do a double body weight squat. Okay, female athletes can get strong. That's a double body weight squat for a female athlete. So what happened? Every teacher in this room has seen this. Every teacher in this room has seen this. Where's strength? It's up here. It's not important. So let's rebuild it. That's the new fitness. That's the new fitness pyramid for kids. Where's strength? It's up here. It's not important. So let's do all this aerobic training. Let's do laps around the track, and we'll fix these neuromuscular deficiencies later. This is our mantra right now. We're going to worry about it later. Strength isn't important. Let's just focus on getting the heart rate above 120. Let's go around the world. This is Spain, for those of you who speak Spanish. Where's strength? Right here. Let's go to Portugal. Where's strength? Right here. It's the same. Let's go to Fiji. I've never been to Fiji, but I should go. Where's strength? Look, they need my help. Where's strength? It's not even important. It's like, if you have time later on, after you do your 10 laps around the track, then we'll worry about strength. It's silly. It's silly. Strength is not important. My favorite artist, Picasso. Every act of creation is first an act of destruction. We have to admit our fitness pyramid is broken. It's not working. Most children are out of shape and deconditioned and not prepared for the demands that we place on them, whether it's a basketball court, a sports field, or after-school play. Okay? So if I was to ask you what's wrong with this, change it. What do we need to do? We need to flip it. We need to flip it. This doesn't work. We need to literally flip it. You know, I've made some efforts. I've tried to make some changes. And I came out with this. We published this one because I believe that strength is the glue that holds a movement together. I said, strength is the glue that holds a movement together. And you guys see it, whether you're at my level with youngsters, or whether you're at the high school level, or whether you're like Coach Hootie. All right? And some of you have a better eye than me when you're coaching the squats and cleans and other movements. Strength is the glue that holds movements together. So I put together this pyramid, and I thought it was awesome. I thought it was amazing. I got strength right there, and I showed it to some of my students who know my work, and they said, Dr. Faigenbaum, whoops, hang on. They said, Dr. Faigenbaum, why are you writing about Christianity? I said, I'm not writing about Christianity, and if you read from the bottom across, some people are seeing this as Christianity. Do you see Christianity? Some people look at this and see Christianity. So I think it still needs more work. Maybe I have to make the strength bolder. But this is my interpretation of a newer model that highlights the critical importance of strength in our training programs. Well, I'm going to end with some good news for you. So I gave you some ugly news, I gave you some bad news, but now there's some good news. That resistance training truly is medicine. What does the research say? The research says we can, in fact, improve strength and power in children. The research says we can improve motor skills. Stronger kids jump higher. Stronger kids run faster. Stronger kids kick a ball further. We see the research that says strength training can enhance sports performance due to the aforementioned improvements in motor skills. Strength training can decrease the risk of sports injuries. What's interesting in that, it's not just strength training. It's a multifaceted intervention that includes strength training, plyometric training, and balance training. But when you take out the strength training, you tend to lose your effect. Strength training seems to be an integral component of injury prevention programs. Strength training can increase fat mass and increase metabolic health. We're really not talking much about metabolic health, but if you were to have me design a program for a 10-year-old who weighs 272 pounds, it would include resistance training. Not because that's the kind of exercise these kids like, but it can improve their metabolic health. Strength training can improve health-related quality of life. We're starting to see benefits in self-concept and self-esteem and less depression in these kids who get stronger. And strength training is part of every long-term athletic development model. You and I could have a discussion of when we do it, but it's part of every long-term athletic development model. So resistance training truly is medicine. It's sort of one-stop shopping. If this is like a poly pill. You take it once a day and we're gonna fix everything. You know, what I'm talking about today is not just my opinion. I think if you were to ask me if you want to document on this, I think the best statement we have on this is our international consensus. We got 13 different organizations together, including the NSCA and the American Academy of Pediatrics and the National Athletic Trainers Association. And it's hard for me to do papers like this because we all got to agree. We all have to agree. And my work in Spanish-speaking countries says We have a copy of this article in Spanish. But there's a compelling body of evidence that says kids can strength train if it's appropriately prescribed. This isn't just me. You have 13 different organizations around the world saying this is what children need to do, they should do it, but you need qualified supervision and instruction. And then there's this, the International Consensus Statement on Youth Athletic Development. Now I know what you're thinking. Some of you recognize Bob Molina right in the front row. Those are the who, and I recognize much of their work today, so let me thank some of the folks that you see here. So this was a meeting in Switzerland on youth athletic development. And I know what you're thinking, because I only have about a minute left. I know what you're thinking. Where's Faigenbaum? I know. You guys ever do a photo bomb? You ever do a photo bomb? Yeah, what happened? You're at a party, your friends are taking a photo, what'd you do? Popped right in there, right? Watch. Bam, there it is. Oh, there it is. I just popped in right on the left. There it is. And what do we say in this document? Encourage regular participation in varied strength and conditioning. And I could have many more of these slides for you. But whether you look at an international consensus or whether you look at our international Olympic statement on youth athletic development, we're all saying the same thing. Start early, expose children to different types of training, get children strong, provide close and competent supervision and instruction so children gain confidence in their abilities to move. We're all saying the same thing. The hard part is when to start. 6 to 10 is a good time to start. You'll hear later today about that starting age. People talk a lot about long-term athletic development, which we wrote about. We have a lot of talk about long-term athletic development, but there ain't no LTAD without daily PE. There ain't no LTAD without daily PE. So we're having a lot of conversations about long-term athletic development, but unless children have daily PE with a qualified PE teacher who's grounded in addressing neuromuscular deficiencies early in life, I'm not sure what all this talk is about, but we maybe can talk about that later. People often ask me, what does your program look like? And I'm not here to sell you sets and reps. I gave you a little hint of what it looked like when I showed you that shot from 1560. I'm going back to the basics, guys. Yeah, we do rope training with kids right now, okay? We do medicine ball training with kids right now. We do body weight training with kids right now. This is what we're doing right now. And I go into school districts and this is what we do. And kids love this kind of stuff, okay? One teacher said to me, well, I introduced this into my program and kids said it was boring. I looked right at that teacher and I said, you're boring. I said, you're boring. Kids love this stuff. Every 30 seconds, I'm changing the exercise. It's a skill building activity. One's easy, one's hard. I'm progressing it every other week to keep them kids engaged, okay? Right now we're bringing kids to the lab. Looking at this type of training. Now we're looking at the metabolic cost. We're bringing 7 and 8-year-olds to the lab, looking at the metabolic cost of this kind of training, because my critics say this type of training doesn't offer any kind of cardiometabolic stimulus. Anyone who says this has never trained with battling ropes. You guys, right? Right, you guys this. I've actually had conferences and people have said to me, well, does it get their heart rate above 110? I say, come on, let's go. Let's go, okay. Of course this can. So imagine this. We have types of training that offer cardiorespiratory benefit, neuromuscular benefit, it's engaging and fun, and I'm preparing them for a lifetime of activity. A classic book on this was called Hypokinetic Disease, sort of a classic book, okay? We've been writing about this for a long time. There's not a whole lot of novel ideas today, because people have been writing about this a long time. And what they said is this: it seems incongruous to spend countless hours on treatments and therapeutic exercises to restore the loss of muscle potential that never should have been lost in the first place. And that's what I find myself doing now. And this was written in 1961. We find ourselves now restoring that loss of muscle potential that never should have been lost in the first place. And this is what we're doing right now. All of you in this room who are PTs and OTs are doing this right now. You're restoring that loss of muscle strength that maybe should have been lost. Some of you in this room are personal fitness trainers, and you're working with adults who want to get in shape. They want to play that softball game, or they want to get that six-pack, right? Right? I mean, how many of you are personal fitness trainers and you're working with a client who comes to you and says, hey, the summer's coming up. I want to look good. I want to get that six-pack. But they're 40, 50 years old, and we should do everything they can. So here's a client I'm working with right now, okay? There we go. He wants to get a six-pack, but we need some help. He wants to work on his six-pack. No, he can't work on his six-pack. We need some help with that guy. I'm going to leave you with this thought. Avoid the pit. So there's a couple of key points I want you to leave with today, and one is we're starting early. So here's the new construct I'm working with. So this is ties my world together. This brings all of my worlds together to address this issue. So there's two really key points of what you leave here with. Okay, one, this decline in physical activity starts early. If we wait until high school, I think we're 10 years too late. Of course I support high school programs. But if you're a high school teacher, what if I presented to you a 14 or 15-year-old who could move? Imagine what you can do with that child. So here's the pit. I started talking about this term today, exercise deficit disorder, this lack of 60 minutes. But it's not enough. And if we only focus on this, it's a losing battle. We earned a D-. So simply focusing on physical activity is not enough. If you don't believe me, look at the data. We earned a D-. It should have been an F, because only 20% of boys and girls in America accumulate 60 minutes. Next, I spoke about this, the concept of pediatric dyspnea. So now we're getting closer. We're getting closer. So it's not just 60 minutes. Okay, but it's 60 minutes of what? And it's a program that should include some type of neuromuscular exercises. And there's not one combination of sets and reps. So later on today, we're going to have a Q&A, and we can talk about it. But don't ask me how many sets and reps can you do, because that's a silly question. My answer is it depends. My answer is really it depends. But what you can ask me are what type of skill building exercises do you do with 6-year-olds or 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds? And the third component, which I briefly touched on today, I call it physical illiteracy. Now, you may not like that term, but an 8-year-old boy in Trenton, New Jersey who cannot read is illiterate, correct? Yes. And the reading teacher would say his reading skills are illiterate. So therefore, the children I work with, I use that term physical illiteracy. And it's not suggested to be in any way negative, but it's identifying the confidence and competence that that child has to move with style and grace in a variety of settings. Not just the basketball court, but the playground, at home, outside, after school. And collectively, we refer to this as the pediatric inactivity triad. The pediatric inactivity triad is a tripartite framework of conditions that we need to address. And the reason why we're failing at keeping children active, fit, and strong is because we have a very simple approach to this very complex problem. Physical activity in children is serious business. It's really serious business, which has huge implications for us as a society. My question for you is, who pays? If we address any one of those three frameworks, we'll have limited success. As programs I see in the literature who bump physical activity 2 minutes or 4 minutes following a 12-week intervention. But it's really a complex intervention. Even Hippocrates said years ago, extreme remedies are very appropriate for extreme diseases. And what we're seeing right now is an extreme disease. This is an extreme disease. I know there's a few physicians in this room. Most of us in this room are not physicians. But maybe we need to start looking at this as a condition with the same energy and vigor as a physician treats a medical condition. Folks, thank you very much for your time. My publications are on ResearchGate, and I'll see you guys on Twitter. Thanks very much.